Left fears Russian election influence? Liars! Democrats make a lot of accusations about Russian influence. Hillary Clinton claimed Russian influence in 2016, and in 2024, leftists claim that Russian influence on the right will rig the election for Trump. You know all that, but you may not know the worst thing about their lies. The left is against Russian influence? That's a lie. A gigantic, bald-faced lie. And we have proof. The hypocrisy of the left, the way they accuse the right of doing what they, the left, do, is astounding. In 2024, the left continue to break their own world records for astounding hypocrisy. We all know that. But how do they keep getting away with it? We'll get back to that. Meeting of the leftists. The game that leftists play should be obvious by now. Some call it projection, but it's simpler than that. The weird thing about it, though, is that it always works, because it's such an obvious lie. It's like the leftists get together at a meeting to decide on their next big issue, and the master of ceremonies asks, "What's the worst thing that we leftists have done?" And all the rest of the leftists start shouting answers. Lots of answers, because the leftists have done lots of bad things. Then after listening for a while, the chairman picks one answer out as the worst thing that leftists have done lately and says, "Okay, so we'll accuse the rightists of doing that." The leftists foment fear. Fear that if they don't have control, there will be chaos. Fear of emergencies and crises that the leftists create. Fear of things from man-made global warming to the trans-genocide. So what did the leftists do then? They accused the right of causing fear and phobias. Islamophobia, transphobia, even fat phobia. The leftists foment hatred by playing off minorities against the majority. Class warfare games. So after fomenting hatred, what do the leftists accuse the right of? Being haters. The leftist mass media has for many decades disseminated lies and propaganda and all kinds of garbage to advance the leftist political agenda. So what did they then accuse the rightists of doing? As soon as the right get a little bit of media of their own, accuse the right media of spreading fake news and disinformation. The thing that the leftist media has been doing since day one. In the game of politics, the leftists love to play the reverse card, and so it is with Russian influence. About that leftist Russian influence propaganda. The Democrats say that Russians are influencing the U.S. elections, social media, and even government policy. And they say that the Russians are doing that by influencing rightist politicians and the right media. In the upcoming election, as we will discuss, one of three things will happen. If two of those things will result in the silencing of Americans on the right by the left charging the right of Russian influence, and it could get much worse, as we will see. But the all-time world champions of peddling Russian influence in America are the leftists. And real Russian influence on the media and U.S. government started no later than the 1930s. Thanks to Russian influence in the U.S., hundreds of Russian spies and members of the Communist Party had positions in the Roosevelt administration. Roosevelt may have had more people in his government who were working for Russia than were working for America. And the U.S. media was so thoroughly controlled by the Russians that the newspapers and radio networks almost never reported anything negative about the Russian government, which was in the process of murdering tens of millions of people. But instead, the media reported only rosy, wonderful things about Stalin and the Russian workers' paradise. Quoting Alexander Solzhenitsyn's book, 200 Years Together, Bolshevism committed the greatest human slaughter of all time. The fact that most of the world is ignorant and uncaring about this enormous crime is proof that the global media is in the hands of the perpetrators. And all that Russian influence was put in place by leftists. A full and accurate account of leftists purveying Russian influence can be found in a shocking 2012 book titled Stalin's Secret Agents: The Subversion of Roosevelt's Government by E.M. Stanton Evans. Quote, "It's evident from now available records that communist penetration of our government and our society in general was over a span of decades massive. Hundreds of Soviet agents, Communist Party members, and fellow travelers were ensconced on official payrolls, beginning in the New Deal era, then increasing rapidly during World War II. The title of the book implies that the destructive influence was in the form of Russian spies, but that falls far short of the whole truth. The biggest damage was done by Russian-influenced policymakers in the U.S. government, who were Russian agents and Communist Party members. They passed laws, issued decrees, and created foreign policies that favored Russia and hurt America. As Evans wrote, policy influence wielded by pro-Soviet apparatchiks on official payrolls, who were in fact dubbed agents of influence by their Moscow bosses. The leftists weren't just helping the Russians influence U.S. government policy. The U.S. leftists were helping the Russians make U.S. government policy. Crucial U.S. policies which empowered Stalin and favored Russia for decades. The vast amount of Russian influence in the U.S. government media in the 1930s and 40s, and then into the 1950s and the rest of the decades of the 20th century is shocking. There were so many Russian spies in the U.S. government that Stalin got technical information on the progress of the A-bomb at about the same time that the U.S. government executive branch did, and sooner than Congress did. U.S. government officials under the influence of Russia gave fantastic amounts of goods of every kind, even whole factories, to Stalin during World War II. Russia then repaid America for all that by shutting Eastern Europe behind an iron curtain of slavery and becoming America's worst enemy. And it couldn't have happened without the leftists who gave Russian influence in the U.S., and it's not ancient history. The blurb for Diana West's 2014 book titled American Betrayal. The secret assault on our nation's character begins with the words, Russian influence may have entered our national pop consciousness in election 2016. Her book is a mind-boggling account of the treason of the U.S. left in the 20th and 21st centuries, including their support for aid to Russia. Some readers may doubt this massive Russian influence in the U.S. in the 20th century, caused by leftists. And of course, the leftist media denies it. But they're lying. The truth is that since the time in question, and right up until the present, the U.S. leftist media and academia have done their best to hide it all, hide everything, all of the Russian influence. The leftists accuse anyone who tells the truth about Russian influence of red baiting or anti-communist hysteria. And what do U.S. leftist media and academia do instead of allowing the truth to become public? Of course they accuse the right of Russian influence. It's crazy. It's insane. How do they keep getting away with it? The leftists keep getting away with this because they control the mass media. Like it or not, the leftist media and academia tell the story of the United States to America. And it's a narrative where there was no Russian influence in the United States in the 1930s or 40s or 50s. But now in the 21st century, when there really is little or none, the leftist media creates a story of a terrible epidemic of Russian influence, all caused by Americans on the right. Fast forward to 2024. Unless Trump is assassinated, three different things could happen in the upcoming presidential election. 1. Kamala Harris may win by a sizable majority. 2. The election may be close. 3. Trump may win by a sizable majority. Remember, the outcome of the 2016 election was contested by the left. The outcome of the 2020 election was contested by the right. What do you think is likely to happen in 2024? Contesting or no contesting? If either outcome 1 or 2 comes to pass, will 2025 see the leftist-controlled U.S. secret police, FBI, ATF, CIA, NSA, Homeland Security, conducting mass arrests of Trump supporters for treason, i.e., for having tried to rig the election because of Russian influence, and that those arrestees will overflow the prisons and be put into concentration camps? The Harris administration will have the power to do this, without doubt. If we learned anything from COVID, it should be that the police will ignore the Constitution and obey orders to arrest Americans for using their rights of assembly and free speech. And the events of recent years have shown that the federal secret police will invent provocations that they can use as an excuse to arrest and imprison Americans who oppose the regime. The police will stand down as leftists, riot and loot, and imprison rightists who oppose the regime as insurrectionists. Similarly, if the election is close, the leftists will claim that they won and take power by force. And are the leftists now setting us up for that by reversing their plan and claiming that it is what Trump would do? Are they accusing Trump of planning a totalitarian dictatorship because it is their plan? Ask Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He would probably tell you that yes, that could happen here. It's happened in a lot of other countries. And mass arrests is how totalitarian nightmare police state works. In his book, The Gulag Archipelago, in Volume 1, Part 1, titled The Prison Industry, Chapter 1 is titled Arrest. He wrote, quote, "How do people get to this clandestine archipelago? Arrest. Need it be said that it is a breaking point in your life? A bolt of lightning which has scored a direct hit on you? Each of us is a center of the universe, and that universe is shattered when they hiss at you. You are under arrest."
Thank you for your interest in Rightful Freedom. Please help us grow by liking and subscribing and commenting. We would love your feedback and see more content at our website, rightfulfreedom.com.